So I'm going to try to give you sort of a heads up, that's not really the correct thing, what I wish I knew when I started off with solar panels. Welcome to TNT Homesteading. Join us as we continue to expand our off-grid life here on our 10 acres in eastern Oklahoma. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Anyone else that comes in, they can catch up. My name's Terry Gerard with TNT Homesteading. I'm glad y'all made it. So I'm going to try to give you sort of a heads up, that's not really the correct thing, what I wish I knew when I started off with solar panels. And we'll go from there, and hopefully at the end we can answer some questions if you've got it. So we live in 400 square feet off-grid, completely off-grid. We've got water catchment, we've got solar panels, we got a bedroom and a living room. Office space is where we're at. We moved there. It's 10 acres in the woods, and it is in the woods, so we had to cut out trees to even put in solar panels. And the reason we ended up going solar panel was an accident. We had no intention of going solar, going really off-grid. We just bought this 10 acres. But the women that own the property next to us, that's right on the road, it cost them $5,000 to get their electric from the road, just not very far onto their property. And I'm like, it's going to cost at least $25,000 to get it to our property line. And that don't count getting it to where this cabin's at, or where we may build a house later, because we still want to build a proper house instead of living in two cabins. So, you know what? We could do solar power for that that much. But when we first started, we just started with 12-volt battery, because there was a little power inverter that you could plug in a fan or a phone charger. And we would carry in the big, heavy boat marine batteries, your 12-volt lead acid that weigh a ton, and we'd carry them in and we'd run it over the weekend. We ended up where we'd run two. So we'd take two with us and we'd bring two home. And we'd charge them at the home, and when we went back to the cabin for the weekend, we'd have them. But they are so heavy, she hated carrying them. There's got to be a better way to charge these here. So that's when we started looking at solar power. We started, thank you. We installed our first solar panels 4 years ago. We've been 100% off-grid, 2.5 years living there, no taking anything home and charging it. It's 100% on the property. We do have a generator that occasionally we got, when you have a week long of clouds and it's hot and you're running air conditioners because it's Oklahoma and it's humid, we're running the air conditioners. And so if I got to turn on the generator, I can. We live over at 10 Killer Lake, around Gore, Oklahoma. We are just below the dam. So again, 4 years since we installed. In fact, we just passed it. A Facebook memory came by and it was like, hey, I was so proud with in fact, we can go on into that. We bought a kit from Rich Solar, just one of the solar companies. It was a lot like Renewable. In fact, their stuff looked almost identical, but they were two different websites and they had two different stamps on there. It may have been made by the same people. I don't know. We started with a 40 amp charge controller, pretty much 2 batteries and that little cheap Cobra 800 watt power inverter. And it worked okay. We did upgrade to 5 batteries and a 3,000 watt power inverter, which I still have the power inverter. It's not currently in use. And then we had 4 200 watt panels. And the cabin is, again, I said earlier, the front door is pointed to the northwest. So I couldn't put them on the roof. I had to build something. I needed them east-west. So that's why they're standalone. I made it like this so I could adjust them. Now we've got 16 solar panels. Again, they're all 200 watt because I already had 4 that were 200 watt. So I just continued on with the 200 watt. I did just adjust the panels for winter angle yesterday. I just dropped them down. I've decided to use the solstice to do that. That way it's a good, hey, I said solstice, equinox. But anyway. So yeah, I've decided to use the spring and fall equinoxes, just switch them over at that point, and then I don't have to guess and I've got I made frames with preset holes, so I can pull them out, adjust them, put them back in. Yes, sir.
More three positions to do it.
I've thought about adding a third position and do it somewhere in the middle. I haven't done it. I don't think I'm going to get that much difference. I might, and it might be worth trying it, you know, but I haven't really, I thought about it, you know, and you could do a whole bunch. You could adjust it every month if you wanted to. But I've got big 1-inch lag bolts through my 4x4s and then go through a 2x4, and they're lag bolts on both. So that way, as I tilt my panels, the arms tilt, and then I've drilled through them and I just knock out the bolt, adjust it, put it back in. And that's actually, I did that last winter. I set it up. The spring, I adjusted it for spring, and then the winter, I just adjusted it again. It's working great. So I could put a third one, and then, like, you know, in the middle, and, you know, in fact, now might be better in the middle position, and then later at the solstice, move it to the very end, and then do that. And I could still do that. Maybe next year. I do have a combiner box, so all 4 sets of my panels come into this box, and then they come in here. They all combine down to one wire that runs to the shed where the batteries are at. This is my setup. We've got 12 200 amp hour lithium iron phosphate batteries. I'll talk about those more in a minute. A all-in-one charger converter system, so I don't have a separate charge controller and power inverter. It's all in one. And then I've got a couple of breakers, one for the batteries, one for the solar panels, and then a breaker box before it goes to the 2 different cabins. In fact, you can see that better there. So that green wire you can see is all I could buy, and that's why I've switched it. But the green wire coming in, that's my solar panels. I get to that box, the little breaker, and I switch it to red, so you at least know, hey, this is really red when it's coming into my box. And that's my solar power. The bigger red one, the dark red one, that's going to and from the inverter to the batteries. And then the big black and red cable goes to our generator that's outside. It's underneath the lean-to, so I can run it whenever needed. We do still have a 12-volt system for our shower. So we've got that 48 amp charge controller that we bought initially. That's what's out there running that. I do have it on an AGM battery instead of a lead acid battery. AGM, we'll talk about that in a minute. And then this runs a 12-volt light, and it runs a 12-volt pump. And that's our shower. So it's just an off-grid, used to be an old chicken coop that was on the property. We got 1 solar panel that charges that. There were 4 of those small panels down there. That was what used to be over here. But those are, all 4 of them combined are 100 watts. That one that's on the picture is a 200 watt panel. And you can't see it, but we've got a redneck hot tub. We got a cast iron tub, clawfoot tub that when you're filling it with hot water, we needed a little bit more power than what it was doing, though we never ran out. Here's the basics on solar power. The sun hits your solar panel, and it goes to your charge controller. My set had a inline fuse, and I also still have a breaker on mine now too, because if I'm working on it, I'll hit that breaker so I don't electrocute myself. I was like, let me, just in case, you know. But you have a breaker that just protects some of your electronics. It comes into the charge controller. It's over here. It comes into the charge controller. Different charge controllers have different. This is much like the one that's pictured on the screen. It's just a little bitty. On this one, the solar panels come into this plug. I can wire out a DC light. I can wire out to the battery. And then over here, you can wire in solar panels. So if instead of came in on this, I came in with wires instead, I could have solar panels that way. It has 3 DC outputs for like a light that you would just plug in, and it's got some USB ports. So it's much like what they've got over here in this picture. This kit came from Harbor Freight. I don't remember how much. I had a 75% off coupon, so I bought it. And it ran our shower for quite some time. So from your charge controller, it charges the batteries. So you have the cables going down to your batteries. That's what's charging your batteries. And then from the battery, if you are running anything that plugs in, your 110 volt, you need a power inverter to go from your DC batteries to your AC devices, TVs, laptops, whatnot. So that's what this is. And again, this one's a big one, 3,000 watt. We used this one for quite a while. Okay, forgive me, but there's a little bit of basics I need to cover on electricity. And I do mean a little bit. First of all, I am not an electrician. I am a computer nerd, a desk jockey, whatever you want, computer jockey, whatever you want to call it. Power, watts. Voltage, most people's used to volts. You know, you're used to 12 volt batteries or 110 volt. We're used to sort of volts. And amperages. If you multiply a device's amp by its voltage, you'll get how much power it's going to use, what its wattage is. So if you only have two, you can figure out all three numbers as long as you've got two with just simple math. And it is simple math. You just divide, times, or that's it. For example, this little phone charger was 5.1 volt. If you could read it, and it took me forever to read it with a big light, is 5.1 volt, 0.2 amps. So that meant at 1.2 watts. That's all it pulled. It didn't pull very much. This is also a real slow charger. The laptop, the power supply, it only gave me two numbers. Actually, I think I did finally find the third one, but I had to hunt. It showed it was 300 watts and 20 volts. Because I know I can divide those two, I knew it was 15 amps. So whatever system you're going to build, you really need to know how much electricity you're going to use. And we didn't do that when we first did it. I said, hey, this should be enough. And in fact, I think before the big upgrade, we moved there full time. She turned on her hair dryer to get ready for church and shut the whole place down. No power. So it was like, okay, we need to upgrade. Wiring. This is important. With your wiring, different size wires have a different maximum value of how much amps should go through that wire. I won't say can, I will say should go through that wire. And you can find this online. Real easy. In fact, I had to go look this up, and that's where I did it. But this big honking wire here is my 4/0 wire. I'll get to more interesting stuff too if you're interested. This 4/0 wire will do 255 amps. This is actually what I had between my 12 volt batteries once we upgraded at one point. I still use this between my batteries. I don't think I technically need this now since they're 48 volt system. I'm just going because the way I've got them wired. But I had them already, so it was cheaper for me to buy this, plus then I don't have to actually ever worry about it because I'm not pulling 255 amps. The other one here, this was just a 10 gauge wire that came with the solar panels. Yeah, this one came with the solar panels, and so it'll do 30 amps. And so I think I really need 8 gauge going from all of my solar panels to my shed where all my batteries are at, and I don't remember if that's what I've got there or not.
That is the other important factor. It's really not included in that table, which is the length.
The length does throw in something. In all honesty, the bigger the cable you can afford, the better off you're going to be. And when we started here, one of the things we said was, this is a trial. We're going to learn with the small system. If I fry it to pieces, because we plan to build a house, we plan to still be off grid, we'll need a bigger system. But if I fry the small one to pieces, so be it. I've learned what not to do. Thankfully, I've not fried anything. Not even electrocuted myself. Solar panels. There are so many different types of solar panels now. When I bought panels, you had solar panels and you had different watts, 200, 100, 400, 550 watts. That was pretty much it. That was 4 years ago. Now there's a lot more. There's a P-type and an N-type. First and foremost, I had to figure out what an N-type solar panel was when I was getting ready for this. Basically, it has something to do with the silicone that's inside of the solar panels. It has P-type. The N-types, this is not an N-type. The N-types have one type of silicone, and it's got two different kinds of silicone. The P-types only have one. Basically, what that really means is the P-types are cheaper. The N-types are more efficient. They work better in the heat. They do a better job in the heat because you lose some there, and they're supposed to last longer. The N-types over the P-types. You will probably find most solar panels of those two types in the categories below. You've got your rigid panels like these. In fact, all the ones I have are rigid. But obviously rigid there. But you can see them where they'll curve and they'll bend and that kind of stuff. Jackery got around that by having 4 small rigid panels to make it where you could put it over something to curve, but it's still a rigid system. Then you got portable. This is actually portable. It's got a handle, it's got locks, the legs fold up, I can fold it, lock it down, pick it up, and carry it like a briefcase. This is portable. It folds up, magnetic lock. Now this is a little bitty, like 25 watt panel or something like that. Those are not really portable, though they're small enough. We had them mounted. They do have legs, but they're not really what I would consider a portable. They don't look like they're really made for portability. They're made to set up somewhere. But you could also just take them out in your garage or into your yard, use them, and then pick them up and throw them back in your garage later. But then you've got your flexible panels, which you can see them curve. We were talking about sailing earlier. The captain of a sailboat I was on, he had a curved one on the top of, his sailboat. The one thing there, don't buy solar panels until you are ready. If you're thinking about it and you're one of the people, it's like, well, let me buy a little bit now, let me buy a little bit now, let me buy a little bit now. Just save your money and buy your panels when you're ready, because you may say, I want this kind, because Renewable has a type of, they call it solar flux. With the way most solar panels work, if you get a little bit of shade on the panel, you pretty much have shut down the whole panel, depending on how they've wired their grids. Each maker can be slightly different, but depending on how they do that, you've lost most of your electricity from that panel. With the solar flux, what I saw on their advertisements is it'll go about 80, you'll lose only 15%. You'll still get what's not shaded from what the looks of it. So so that's really good compared to most of them. Really had me intrigued. And I don't know if other makers have other things like that. I haven't seen it from anyone but Renewable, but there's...
Renewable has a tendency to do things that are
Yep. Okay, there's different kinds of solar panels. Monocrystal, polycrystal, and amorphous. In fact, I didn't even know about amorphous until I looked up to what kind of solar panels these were, and these are amorphous solar panels. And again, these were Harbor Freight. I wanted to say Tractor Supply. Harbor Freight. It's where I got those. Mono panels, in my opinion, that's what you want to get if you're going to get a house system. You're going to build something for your house, you want the monocrystalline. They work better in hotter climates. They're going to be more expensive. They last about 40 years, is what the spec sheets say. The polycrystal, 13 to 16% efficiency. They're cheaper. They last 25 to 35 years, so not quite as long. They're not quite as good, but they're cheaper. But they are getting harder to find because they're just going to mono most of the time. That's what people want. And most people it's doing it, they want the efficiency. And the amorphous, they say they're higher efficiency. I couldn't find any specs, but you have to have, like, they take up twice the space. Well, is that really? I have some myths about it. I really couldn't find any big panels that were that. I only found small panels like this or even smaller. So they exist. That's pretty much all I'm saying about that. You
noticed that last time I was in Hartford, they even got away from
have they? I did. They're still on their web. That kit is still on their website. You really want to match your specs on your solar panels. All of my solar panels, I bought those 4 and then I went back and got 12 more. And I had to do the math to determine what I wanted to do. Did I want 12 more or did I want to completely replace those with something bigger? Because your voltage times your amperage gives you your wattage. So all 3 of these panels that's on the screen are 200 watt panels, but they all have different voltages and amperages. So with electricity, your voltage, like on the batteries or on the solar panel, your voltage is the same in series and your current, your voltage is additive. Your current is the same. In parallel, they're the opposite. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I've got 3 sets of panels. At the top here, 3 31 volt panels. The middle, 3 36 volt panels. You can do the math, add them all together. They're each 200 watts. Okay, the Renogy is actually $5.99. They rounding error, or rounding, you could get to 600, but I rounded it down. But that's what you got. If I mix up one of the panels, so right down here, if I threw in, instead of 31 volts and 6 amps, I put a 36 volt panel in there. Amps were the same, but as a 36 volt panel, I actually got more wattage off of that. Because the amps were the same, it didn't care in series. So this is plugged into this, is plugged into this. Straight in series. But if the amps were different and I did that, it uses the lowest amperage. So on this example down here, only one panel was 5 amps. But it dropped, instead of 572 watts that I would expect, if I just took the wattages across the bottom and added them together, you'd like, oh, that's 572 watts. But because of the way math works with electricity, it's actually 517 watts. So those other 2 panels became a 5 amp panel instead of a 6 amp panel. Now in parallel, we'll skip straight to the bottom. If my volt, that one panel has higher volts than the others, the amps were the same, well, I still got 600 watts of power, but that one panel was a 231 watt panel. So you would have thought 261 watts, but I only get in 600 instead of 631, sorry. And then the amps stayed the same. It didn't really matter. We just added the differences of the amps, and we just added the voltages, the voltages were the same, so the lowest voltage, sorry, I have got that backwards. It added the, goodness gracious, let me look at my picture. The voltages I was able to it would have took the lowest of, and the amperages it took, it just added them together and says, okay, we're good. So again, voltage is additive in series, and voltage or current is additive in parallel. It's a little confusing until you're really messing with it. In our system, we are both parallel and series. So I really want them to be same all the time. I have 4 solar panels. Each set of 4 solar panels is 1 set. So I've got 1 set of 4. I've got 4 sets of 4 solar panels. They go into that combiner box. It combines them there and sends them to the shed. Our batteries, I've got them 4 in series. Goodness, 4 in series and 3 in parallel. So I've got 12 volt batteries, but I've made them 3 48 volt batteries. Okay, weather. I had someone ask me about weather online. The hotter the panels get, they don't work quite as well in the heat. They like cooler temperatures. During the fall, during the spring, during the winter, they work okay. The heat, I mean, they still work great, fine in the heat, but I will notice a drop in my electricity even on a sunny day. It doesn't seem I make as much as like today. Cold, it was fine. Wind, I had someone ask me about wind. Wind's going to matter on how you've got them mounted. For the most part, wind doesn't really affect them. The only way the wind would affect them is they rip them off your roof or rip your stand down or something like that. Hail, okay, hail's a different story. They can damage them. You know, if you get a big softball size hail, nothing stopping softball size hail. Just don't go out yourself and hope your roof holds up, because even that might not hold up. But your normal, most of the hail, you know, for 4 years, I went and looked at my panels the other day because I was cleaning them. I don't have any real damage. I might have a little teeny crack, maybe. It's hard to tell if it was, I couldn't even tell if it was a crack or not on the 16 solar panels. So, I mean, it'll take it fine, because if you think about it, it's at an angle. It's deflecting it. It can cause problems. They say make sure it's 3.2 millimeter glass. All the panels I went and looked had it. They said if you get 4 millimeter, it's even better. I didn't find any, but I had to download the spec sheets to even look for it. It wasn't just easily on the website. Truthfully, it's not something I looked at before now. Placing your panels. Do you want to put it on your roof or a free stand like I had at the beginning in those pictures? It really depends on placement. You want your panels east-west, perpendicular to true north. Not magnetic north, but true north. So here in McAllister, true north is actually 2 degrees to the east from magnetic north from here. So it's almost the same. You know, it's just a slight tweak. But depending on where you're at in the country, it could be more. And it would actually cause you to get less electricity generated the more you're off of that east-west travel. Now, if you have an adjustable solar tracker that tracks east to west, you know, they were talking about a single axis tracker will get you 20 to 30% more electricity, and a dual axis that will go up and up and down to truly follow it the whole direction will get you 40 to 60% is what I was seeing online. I do not have a tracker. I would sort of like a tracker because that's now you have maintenance on a, you know, I don't know, I don't have one, I don't know what, but I'm sure you're going to have pivot points, you'll have motors, it's going to use some electricity, but that's a pretty impressive number.
You may get 50% more production. You may not come out.
You say that, but I bet you would. And what he said online is you may not get it all back, the money you put into it back. One thing I forgot to mention, we've had our solar panels now for, well, this said 57 months, but that's not right because we just passed our 5-year or our 4-year mark. So we've spent about $13,000 on our kit, everything we've done about that with wiring, because I have all the numbers for everything else but my wiring. I got most of my wiring from Lowe's. That's about $228 electric bill a month. Now, we spend it all up front, and you just slowly get it back by not paying an electric bill.
Also, earlier referred to what it's going to take you to get electricity to your property.
Right. Yeah, it was going to be $28,000 or $25,000 just to get it to the property line. So I'm still at spending $13,000. I'm below that. Charge controllers. There's 2 types of charge controllers. There's an MPPT charge controller. It stands for maximum power point tracking. It does math in its computer chips to take into voltage irregularities because you have shade, you have this, you have problems, you know, cloud cover. It's going to take that voltage and try to get as much power put in those batteries by converting voltage to amperage when it's charging your batteries. The other type is a PWM, pulse width modulation. It's cheaper, it's less efficient. You sort of see that whole cheaper, it's less efficient thing throughout this whole thing. And it sort of switches on and off, sort of what I was telling you. I don't have one, and it was sort of hard for me to really understand what it was talking about. I have the MPPTs. The 2 I've got at the house are MPPT. I don't know what this is. I wouldn't be shocked if this was PWM because it was just, it doesn't say. So usually if it's MPPT, they're all like, hey, this is MPPT. But, right. And again, this was a cheap system, but it was usable. So it was a great starting point. But the different systems have different options. Some are Wi-Fi, some have Bluetooth, some I can, the charge controls, mine's an all-in-one system, but some of them will take a battery charger into it. So you can take your power in and it'll charge your batteries from your generator or your shore, which is your grid power. Some will have temperature sensors, so you can adjust, okay, don't charge when it gets below 32 degrees. I wish mine had one and it doesn't. You can't have more than one charge controller, by the way. So if you have one set of panels that's doing certain things, but in the afternoon it's completely shaded and you don't want to use that one, you don't want to mix your voltages. So having two charge controllers and something like that could be really great. You have them scattered if you had the money. You could have them in different places to make sure you're getting your best electricity and you're not losing charge because some of your panels got covered up by the trees or whatnot. So your batteries, you have lead acid. We're all familiar with that because that's what's in our cars. That's what's in most people's boats. They're heavy, they're easy to get. You can only discharge them to 50%. Below 50%, you can damage them and have problems getting them fully charged. AGM, absorbent glass mat. They're sealed, they're less maintenance, they're still heavy. You can discharge them to about 80%. I did see some stuff that said, well, between 50 and 80. So do some research on the battery. If you get an AGM battery, look and see how far it suggests you take it, because apparently different makers may say different things. Lithium iron phosphate, that's what we have. It's lighter, it's longer lifespan, and you can take it to 98%. They suggest not to about 90, that 80 to 90 mark. Again, depending on your makers. I don't like to take mine, well, I don't like to take it to 80, but I can go to 90. So that's where we're at. Lithium ion is another option. You're not supposed to take them to around between 70 and 80. Most of the battery fires that I've heard of are from lithium ion batteries, not lithium iron phosphate, LiFePO4 or LFPs, but lithium ion. That's where most of the fires that I've heard of from batteries come from. I do not have them. I do not want them. For that reason alone, but I went with the lithium iron because it was lighter, it was bigger, it was nice, that seemed to be all the hotness. There's someone I follow on YouTube. He has a 12 volt lead acid, but he's got the space for all of his batteries. But you can do a system either way. You just have to know that how far can you drain those batteries. New batteries, I see talk about all the time of different kinds of batteries coming out. Power inverters, you have from pure sine wave, modified sine wave, and square wave. The closer to that pure sine wave you get, the more efficient it's going to be. The further away you are, the less efficient it's going to be. And it's how the electricity is generated. And I'm going to slaughter this. But basically you want it closer to a wave. And when it's jagged, you have your ups and downs. You want that smooth. What it really means for us is cleaner electric. I used to have a power scrubber cleaner. I had a box that I'd gotten somewhere along the way years and years and years ago, because our electricity would not, it would brown out a little bit. You could get static and stuff through the lines, and it would sort of clean it out. But basically, it's going to be a cleaner electricity. If you've ever plugged something in and you get a buzz in the line, that's going to come from dirty electricity. It's not quite clear. So those square wave power inverters are going to have more of that. Again, pure sine wave is really your better bet when you're, definitely sine wave is what I would go for, but pure sine wave is really where I would go for. They have different features, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. I can connect right now to my system at home and see how much we're charging and all that kind of stuff. When you buy a power inverter, it has to be sized to your system. Is it a 12 volt inverter? This is a 12 volt inverter. When we went to a 48 volt inverter, I had to replace this and get a 48 volt inverter. So that's why, even though this is still a nice inverter, we couldn't really use it because of the batteries on it. But they do have 12 volt, 24, 48 volt. And then your output, this is 3,000 watts. So how much are you pulling out? And that's going to depend on how much you use. One thing there at the bottom, your voltage, it's showing your voltage and your amperage that you're different. You know, if you got 1,200 watts of power in your batteries that you're trying to pull out at one time, for a 12 volt system, you'd need 100 amps coming out of that. So you would need a much heavier cable. You wouldn't necessarily need this size, but you need a much heavier cable to get that out of than if you're using a 48 volt, which only needs 25 amps.
It's a lot of difference.
It's a huge difference. It's a quarter. And then the 24 volts is sort of a happy median. And you know, 12 volt systems, you can buy lots of 12 volt appliances. You know, you can get 12 volt lights and 12 volt fans and 12 volt fridges. You can start a system with a single 12 volt battery if you start a 12 volt system. You know, you're putting something in your chicken coop or your shed, you could do a small set and just sort of go from there. You do have more power loss at a 12 volt system because of your like heat and, you know, resistance and all that kind of stuff from the amperages of the wires. 24 volt systems sort of in the between. You can still find some 24 volt appliances, but not many. But you need 2 batteries to start off with, unless you can find a 24 volt battery, and I'm sure they make them. But you're not going to Walmart more than likely and getting a 24 volt battery if your system, you know, you had a problem where you decide you need to upgrade. You're not doing that at Walmart. Yeah. They do have, and I had it on the 24 volt, and they have them here too. They do have step down converters. I just learned about this the last couple of weeks. It will go from a 48 volt system to a 12 volt. So if you have a 12 volt system, but an inverter uses electricity to convert from DC to AC, I'm sure you're going to lose some converting it down as well. A 48 volt system, it's a quarter of the, you know, a quarter of the 12 volt system as far as amperage is concerned. So your wire size isn't as needed as much. Those MPPT charge controllers are even better on the 48 volt systems. They seem to put in more oomph, higher end products and stuff like that. Okay, what do you need if you're going to start off with a solar? You need solar panels, you need batteries, you need charge controllers, you need wiring. That's all you need for a solar system, really and truly. Now there's some nice to haves. If you're going to run 110 volt appliances, you need a power inverter. You don't have to if you're running a 12 volt system and you got 12 volt lights and you've got whatnot. Fuses, they're great. When we bought our set, it actually came with an inline fuse. But I've added a couple like this that I can wire in. I already got it blown, but I can.
It says those really aren't optional.
They're really not, but when I started off, I didn't have it for probably a year or two. And if you're starting off, you're just doing this, these aren't expensive. I got these on Amazon, and this one's what is this, 40 amp. Now I've got higher ones now, but they're still not very expensive. But they're really, I would get these because it just saves. If you have some sort of surge on your panels, or you have a surge from your battery, or it cuts it just sort of like your breaker box at the house. Just lets that die.
In a low voltage system, it's not that a low, I should mention, a low voltage system.
Yep, and that's what I've got. I've got fuses out on my combiner box. I have fuses, and then I've got an inline on my power coming in, and then I've got one between my solar and my charge controller and my batteries, and then I got a breaker right there next to it going to the houses. I've got it all. I've got breakers all over the place,
That's good.
and that's really what you should have. But you don't have to start off with that. If you start off with a 12 volt for your chicken coop, you probably don't need that.
You're probably not going to spend the money.
Probably not. I skipped one, bus bars. These come in handy. This was the big one I had. These come in handy, and I've got it on the 12 volt system where my 12 volt comes into one of these, and now I've got my light comes onto this, and my pump comes onto this, and I don't have to mess with the batteries. I don't have to mess with the solar. I don't have to mess with any of that. They come to these 2 different bus bars that I can just plug in and add stuff. And this can be handy to have something like this. So these are great. A multimeter. If you don't have one, get one. They're great. I used it the other day. I had some problems with solar panels. I was trying to figure out what was going on. I was using this to try to see what was going on. Another thing that would be really handy is get a kit. It's got a crimping tool. When I made my cables the first time, I bought a package of these that have the little metal connectors, and they go inside of the plastic ones that snap together, and I used needle nose pliers to crimp them on there. Well, every once in a while I've had them come off. In fact, that happened the other day when this summer, a quarter of my panels quit working because I was like, what's going on? So I bought this after the Okie Homestead Conference, listened to that solar talk, and I went and got a kit, and I already had everything I needed. So this summer when I had problems, I didn't have to order anything. I didn't have to suffer. I just went and grabbed it, pulled it out, took it off, crimped a new one on. This crimper is amazing. I used it again yesterday when I adjusted my panels. So again, this is amazing. It makes it easier. It makes it easier. The combiner box. When I had all my panels come in through my combiner box, it really does make things easier there. If you have a grid tied system, you need to make sure you can turn it off. Because if the electric goes down and the linemen are out working on the line, and it's a nice sunny day after the storm has passed, and you're generating all the electricity your little heart can take, you're sending it back up that line, and you electrocute a lineman. My system is not grid tied, so I can't really help you on that. And I think some of them may even, might have a shore. Mine may keep me from going up shore. I don't know. I haven't read the book on that because that wasn't something I was doing. But if you're going to plug it into your power supply, please, please, please keep that in mind. Solar generators. I've had a couple of things. People, what's a solar generator? I've had questions because you hear all solar generators all the time. A solar generator is a power station, like your Jackery or whatnot, with a solar panel plugged into it. Because this has, 12 volt out. It's got a 110 out. It's got some USB ports. It's got the end for the solar panel to come in. It's a battery. It's got to be one of the lithium, one of the types of lithium because it's light. This is a little 12 volt, but this is what that is. It's a solar generator. To me is a power station. And then it's just got buzzwords. Okay, our system, we have 16 200 watt panels. We have 12 200 amp hour 12 volt batteries, LiFePO 4s. We have a 48 volt 3500 watt inverter charger. It's an all-in-one system. It'll do 80 amps or to 150 volts on the charge controller. So I can pretty much do twice of what we are doing with our panels right now from that system. And it's got a 40 amp charger. So that's probably the shore for my generator. It's got a 40 amp charger for that. What would I do different? If I could get my batteries inside, I would. No batteries like to be charged below freezing. If the batteries are below freezing. If I had a root cellar, I would put them in the root cellar. If I just keep them above 32 degrees. We've gone through all sorts of stuff trying to keep it over 32 degrees. So I do have a spreadsheet I'm about to show you to sort of help you figure out what you need to do. So I am almost out of time. I have nowhere I need to rush off to. So if you have questions after this, I don't know how much time I'm going to have. On the spreadsheet, in red, I've got summertime, and you can move closer if you need to see this. In red, I've got summer. In blue, I've got winter. I put in different devices. My laptop, and this was a different laptop than this one, 150 watts, and I've got one of them, and I'm going to run it for 8 hours a day. I think that's my work laptop. That was 8 hours a day on my laptop. So I know I need 1,200 watts of electricity every day to run the laptop. A table lamp, I'm going to run for 4 hours. Fridge, I'm going to run for 24 hours because it's a refrigerator. You know, if you plug in your devices, you pull it up, you look at the specs on the little printed tag or stamped on the box, you can put it in your spreadsheet. Are you going to use it in the summer or going to use it in the winter?
So much difference do you see in tables?
In mine, in this one, I've got quite a bit. In fact, I use a half. The plan is at least half. Last year, it would have been a lot more. We're not planning to run our wood stove in our bedroom this year. We're probably going to run the mini split. So we're going to run it for our 7:15, maybe not, from 7:15 to 2 a.m. is when we're going to run the mini split in the bedroom with the heater running. So I'm still going to have the electric in that. But in the living room, I'm going to have the wood stove in there the whole time. So I'm not going to have any mini split usage in the living room. So that's, you know, a good portion of our electricity. And now this isn't, I took out some of the stuff, but I mean, the more data you put in there, and our problem is we've added stuff. Well, let's add this. Oh, let's add this. Oh, we're still doing good. And then I've noticed, oh, we're having to run the generator a little bit more than I like. But then when I found out, oh, wait, I've got cables pulled. Okay, let me fix the cables. Okay, we're doing a little bit better. But then hurricane comes in. We don't get hurricanes, but we get all the cloud cover in the summertime. And so it's hot and you got your ACs running and you've got days on end of clouds. So, you know, you can just add that in there. Then you go to the system, the other tab. Up here, it's not showing. I know it's not showing. Does it show my mouse? It does show my mouse. Sweet. So up here, it brings those numbers up so you can see them, just so you have an idea. This top table shows your batteries. 12 volt, 48, 12 volt, 24, 48 volt systems. Because you may not want to spend the money for a 48 volt system, but you may not want 12. Based on those numbers, it tells you how many batteries you're going to need. And that's based off of what kind of battery you want. And that's a LiFePO 4. If I came down here and changed that 90 to a 50, it changes the numbers for me automatically. So that way you can just say, hey, okay, I know I need 6 12-volt batteries at, and that's at amp hours. What's my amp hour? 300 amp hour. So if it's only a 100 amp hour battery, well, I need 17 12-volt batteries to handle my summertime load at 50%. That's a lot of battery. 12 volts are going to be, lead acid's going to be a lot cheaper though. So you could get into the situation if you've got a place to put them, you know, that's it. If you're in a motorhome, you may not want that. And then down here in the solar panels, you can find other panels and add it to the spreadsheet if you want, but these were some I had found. It's like, here's my panel wattage, or the watts. This column right here, I've got a factor. I sort of call it my fudge factor. What is it for you? I'm actually, what I notice is I get about 2/3 rated of what my panels. So I can get 3,200 watts of electricity on my panels. And most of the time when I'm looking, I'm getting about 2,200. So, you know, I might take that 70% efficiency, because like on my 200 watt panels, for those numbers, I'd need 13. But, you know, I might want to take that to, say I want it 66. Give me that 2/3. You know, I'm getting ready to expand. Let me try to get this a little bit better. Oh, I need 14 panels, not 13. Oh, okay. And then there are something called peak sun hours. For the Sallisaw area, peak sun hours, you get between 5 in winter and 6 in summer. That's the peak time, not obviously daylight hours. And you're making electricity all the time, whether it's cloudy, well, unless it's super, super, super cloudy, you know, some of those heavy thunderstorms will go to 0. But even on cloudy days, you're making electricity. You're just not making as much. But I do have that linked. I've got it, you know, I can go back to that. If you want to scan that, just make a copy. It's a Google Sheet document. You can make a copy and use it to your heart's content. Do you have any questions?